Well, there's more good news out there. At least I think there's good news out there. Bad and good. Tulsi Gabbard, DNI, came out and said, hey, more than 40 more security clearances are being revoked for these, I don't even know if we can call them intelligence people, intelligence professionals, for, quote, abused public trust by politicizing and manipulating. That sounds bad. Who's going to jail for that? Joining me now, one of the great senators, very few good senators we have, Senator Eric Schmitt from the great state of Missouri, and author of the book, The Last Line of Defense. My goodness, do we all need to learn about that, beating the left in court? Okay, Senator, you have an op-ed now talking about prosecutions for this Russiagate hoax stuff. Obviously, I've said over and over again, I believe this is critical for the United States of America. If you can't go to jail for cooking the books and using the CIA to attack your Republican opponent, then you can't go to jail if you're in government.
Right. No, I think that we've gotten, now these disclosures from Tulsi Gabbard, and you've got the breadcrumb trail now to indictments. That's how I feel about it. And also, and we can walk through that, but I also think if you want to understand why they were so hell-bent on making sure President Trump never got back in office, this is it. Because they knew that Hillary Clinton worked with the Soros organization to come up with a distraction from her email problems. They knew that the Steele dossier was fake. They knew at the time, Barack Obama authorized spying on a political candidate. They knew they doctored the books on the Intelligence Committee report, even though they knew it was a BS story. And then they continued to use that to try to sideline his first administration. They continue to use it. By the way, we talk about it in the book. When we took the deposition of Elvis Chan, they used that as a predicate for, the Hunter Biden laptop, keeping that quiet because they claimed it was a Russian hack and leak operation, even though they knew it was true. So the punchline is, I think that, the statute of limitations may have expired on some of this stuff, but it doesn't expire on a conspiracy. And I think that's where the indictments ought to go. There should be indictments, this conspiracy. So if you're Clapper, Comey, or Brennan, I'd make sure you're lawyered up, because that's where this thing's going.
Okay, you say that's where this thing's going, and I know you are a man of your word. It's one thing for me to get on television and scream someone has to go to jail, right? Every American feels that way. It's quite another to actually prosecute and convict and put them there. Yeah. How do we go about doing that?
Well, I think, again, when you're dealing with a conspiracy, when you light the fuse at mile marker 1, you're responsible for the things that happen, even if you're not directly involved in mile marker 10. And I think that's, again, the most likely scenario of where we would see indictments here is a conspiracy potentially to defraud the United States. Because if you think about what they were doing, this makes Watergate look like child's play, or at least what people wanted everyone to believe about Watergate. This was about sidelining somebody from ever being elected in the first place. And then when he was elected, in something they knew was false, they tried to get rid of him there and try to diminish his presidency. And again, we saw the lawfare that followed after that once they demonized President Trump, and he delivered the greatest political comeback in American history. So the conspiracy, I think, is the angle here, and I hope we see something from that. I think the time has come.
You mentioned Elvis Chan, and I'm glad you did. He's somebody, people who watch this show are very familiar with him. I understand we have statute of limitation things and things like that, but we have a former FBI special agent on camera bragging about campaigning for Democrats as an FBI special agent. That's essentially what he did. How can we go on without people inside the walls of the FBI seeing the inside of the walls of a prison? Being at the FBI cannot be a license to commit crimes, and clearly the people at the FBI think it is.
Well, and one of the things, and the reason why I wrote the book, Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court, you can go to Amazon and get it right now, released yesterday, is to walk people through what was it like to take his deposition? What did we find out? What was it like to take Anthony Fauci's deposition? Because we brought the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit, which exposed the censorship enterprise before Elon Musk had even bought Twitter and Twitter files and the congressional investigations. And what we found, Jesse, was this leviathan of government agencies that were turned against the American people. If you had the wrong opinion about masks, or the wrong opinion about vaccines, or you had an opinion about the election in 2020, the government was working directly with social media companies through secret special portals to silence millions of voices. That's the truth. And I think what we're seeing now is, so these kind of things are exposed. What the book is about is, You got to stand up and fight back. We fought back on the vaccine mandate. We took it to the Supreme Court. We won. We fought back on the student loan debt forgiveness case. We took that to the Supreme Court. We won. We filed Missouri versus Biden, and we were successful ultimately getting the truth out. We sued 50 plus school districts in Missouri for the mask mandates, and we won. We took on ESG, and now that's in retreat. We took on DEI and CRT, and we won. So if you got the courage to stand up and fight back, and you talk about this a lot, we can do anything. The people are with us. The law is on our side. Common sense is on our side. Common sense is on our side. So this book, Last Line of Defense, is a playbook for not just the stuff that we did, but the fights that are ahead. And I think it's important to tell that story.
Senator, you mentioned the NGO connection, the cartel we have going, where the government essentially, it knows it can't censor, but you just give out grants, work with a private company, and you find now. That has to be against the law, but that's a whole different nut to crack. Can that be cracked? Because obviously our freedom of speech can work against us when it comes to things like that, but we can't have Democrats colluding with private corporations to crush the rights of American citizens every time they take office.
That's right. And, these names like the Institute for Peace and the National Endowment for Democracy and all these ridiculous things, we need to totally get rid of these things. They need to be defunded. One of the things I'm most proud of is I handled the rescissions package in the Senate. And we clawed back $8 billion for all the ridiculous stuff like, the DEI in Burma and Sesame Street in Iraq and Guatemalan sex changes. It was money. I mean, it's $8 billion, but it was also, we demonstrated the political will to do something about it. We'd not done rescissions like that in 30 years. It's the first really kind of its kind. So my hope is there's more of those things, but we got to root this stuff out because this NGO nexus with the government, it's fueled violations of free speech. It's fueled censorship. It's fueled mass migration into this country. They give it to these entities, then they go around and send everybody through the back door, and then the government claims they don't know anything about it. This is a true, quote unquote, threat to democracy. It's not President Trump. The reason why he was the threat to democracy to them is he wanted to disrupt this stuff. And I think that's our mission. I believe that firmly. And again, the reason why I wrote the book, Last Line of Defense, was to see the landscape as I saw it. When I was AG at that time, I saw it all from the highest levels of government to the local superintendent. And the lesson is, if you stand up and you fight back, we can win. We can be successful. And what people want more than anything, Jesse, what they want is authentic leadership. They want to know that there's people that are going to fight for them, not permanent Washington or the Washington consensus, but the people in so-called flyover country in states like Missouri. They're tired of this stuff and they want fighters.
Yeah, speaking of Missouri, you left the AG post of Missouri and now you're a United States Senator. Andrew Bailey, who I like very much, he's apparently leaving and he's going to be co-director of the FBI. Is there anybody left to be AG of Missouri?
Well, yeah, we listen, the show me state, we punch above our weight class, I feel like. And so Andrew's he'll do a great job at the FBI and hopefully can help clean up that place too.
What do we do about the judges? Yeah, every day we wake up, I know you do the same thing. We wake up and there's a new judge that did something crazy. We're screaming at our phones, but they're still judges. You're not voting for them. How do we get these people out? Because we can't survive like this if there's a network of judges who are working against the country at all times.
Well, let me give a little bit of at least an optimistic view of this. So what happens typically when people get upset is they'll see that district court ruling. But as these cases, President Trump, and again, Last Line of Defense, why we wrote the book is you got to have the courage to fight back. My Solicitor General, speaking of Missouri, who was my Solicitor General, John Sowers, the Solicitor General of the United States of America now. So John knows how to fight and win. And by and large, they are winning. They got the Supreme Court to say you can't do these universal injunctions anymore. It's a total abuse of authority that one judge in New Mexico can decide foreign policy for the president of the United States of America. So those are gone. President Trump, by and large, is winning on these deportation cases as they make their way through. And even on the personnel and programming, they've said, yeah, you can fire these USAID employees. And so I think along the way, look, there's some radical judges that Biden got in, but by and large, as they're making their way through the courts, President Trump is successful in his defense of his policies. That's good news, even though some of these individual decisions certainly are frustrating.
The book is Last Line of Defense. Senator, I appreciate you very much. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.